I have recently been thinking about how do we respond to change. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Anthony Sani, and on been thinking, I share productivity and personal development insights to help you achieve your best in life, career, and business. And on this episode, I want to talk about something that I believe is really relevant for the times we live in today, and that is, how do we respond to change? Now, long before the global pandemic, individuals in the workforce and organizations have been struggling with changes. Changes have been snowballing, from tech changes to political changes to all kinds of changes in social behavior and norms. And it all came to a head in 2020, I believe, with the global pandemic, where we were all forced into an immense amount of change within a very, very short time. But the tide had been building before that. The real question of today's modern living, of life in today and working today, is not whether or not we will have to respond to change. It's really a question of degree. How much change will we have to respond to? And perhaps more importantly, what's the best way to respond to those changes when they inevitably come up? I want to share with you three possible approaches, three possible responses, three possible postures you can take when, not if, when you are faced with changes. So the three potential postures I want to share with you are: 1, resist the change; 2, accept the change; and 3, engage the change. Number 1 is resist the change. This is the natural human posture, the natural human tendency. For most people, when things change, it makes us uncomfortable. Our natural instinct is to be like, whoa, push back, resist the change. And while most people will tell you this is not the best posture, I'm going to add a caveat to that to say, absolutely, sometimes it is the best posture. Most of the freedoms we enjoy in the world today, especially out here in the West, exist because some people had the courage to stand up to resist a negative change, to resist an oppressive law or ordinance, to do something when they saw that something wasn't right. And they created their own positive change by resisting a negative change. So resisting change is not always a bad thing. The problem is, most of the changes you and I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis are not changes regarding ethics and justice and equity and these bigger questions of life. There are often changes like using new technology, or changes of organizational restructuring, or changes like we've seen in the past few months of just a new way to work. The challenge with changes like these is A, they're often neutral in their nature, and B, they don't really lend themselves to a lot of our own input as far as changing the circumstance. So adopting a posture of resistance to this kind of change is actually counterproductive, and all it ends up doing is causing you and I a lot of stress and putting us in a state of mind of being either hopeless, powerless, or worse, both. So while resisting change is a worthy stance for some changes, most of the time, for the changes you and I are going to face in our workplace or that organizations are going to have to deal with, resisting change is often not the best approach. That brings us to number 2, which is accepting the change. So if resisting the change asks the question, how can I stop this? How can I resist this? Accepting the change asks the question, well, how can I cope with this? Accepting change is realizing, looking around and saying, you know what? This is how things are now, and so you just accept it. A good example of this is, say you were driving on your way to work, when we still drove to work, and you came across a section of construction on the street. Out here in Calgary, we have a joke. For those of us watching from outside Calgary, Calgary gets very snowy, and for about 6 months of the year, it's winter here. And there's a joke that says there are only 2 seasons in Calgary. There is winter and construction season. Because obviously when the snow stops falling is when all the construction happens. So it's not unusual to be on your way to work and to get into a massive holdup because of construction. That's one of those situations where resisting the change is definitely not going to do you any good. The best thing you can do is just accept that change. It is what it is. to quote one of the worst and most meaningless tautologies of the day. It is what it is. You accept the change. And so the question to ask in that situation is, well, how can I cope? And you might be having situations like this in your workplace, especially in recent times. Things are happening and there isn't much, quite frankly, you and I can really do about it. The question is, how do we accept? How do we simply cope with this? What can we do? How can we reposition ourselves, our environment, so that we just get through this? And there's nothing wrong with that. That is absolutely valid, especially for things that are beyond our control and things that, quite frankly, we would just be hurting ourselves, banging our heads up against the wall, trying to fix. And then there's the third approach, which for me is usually the best posture, the best stance to take when it comes to change, and that is engaging the change. How can I engage this change? So if resistance asks the question, how can I stop this? And acceptance asks the question, how can I cope with this? Engaging asks the question, how can I make this change work for me? And it's a tougher question and it'll require a more creative answer. But the more times you can take this posture of engaging a change, how can I make it work for me, I believe the better off we will be. What's a challenge for one person usually translates to growth for another person. And the person who grows through challenges is the person who engages those challenges, engages those changes. Let me just make something clear. This is not about trying to guilt anyone into feeling like they have to be on the ball and productive even when they don't feel like it. Oftentimes we'll find ourselves passing through these phases. We resist sometimes, then we accept, then we engage. But what I'm recommending, what I'm asking you to consider is, what is your current posture to the changes around you? Being aware of where you are is a very necessary step to moving on to where you might want to be. So if where you want to be in the midst of all these changes, for the changes you can, if where you want to be is at the level of engagement, see where you are today. Are you at the resist level? Are you at the accept level? Or are you already getting into the engagement level? Knowing where you are will help you get to where you want to be, and choosing where you want to be is going to ultimately determine where you wind up. So that's what I've been thinking about. I hope this message helps you, especially with what's been going on in the world. When you face, not if, when you face the changes that are coming and will still be coming, how will you respond? How will you position yourself? What will be your stance? What will be your posture? Will you resist, accept, or engage? And I hope you will choose the one that helps you achieve your goals in the best possible way. Change can be hard and change can be uncomfortable, but how we approach it and how we respond to it can make all the difference in our experience of it. Until the next episode, my name is Anthony Sani. As always, encouraging you, be your best, do your best. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.